Okay, welcome to the Barrett channel, welcome to another video. I just want to sort of talk today about the coronavirus situation. Be a bit different to my normal updates where I was sitting in my office. I am out and about walking today. I haven't got my mask on, I do have it here, but because I'm sort of out in the open air and I'm not by anybody else, I don't feel there's a need to wear it. There are, a lot of normality returned now to China. It's still not 100% gone, and it is a little bit worrying that they've found one or two asymptomatic cases in the last few days. I think there's been 2 here in Shenzhen today. One person had come from the UK and one person had returned from Hubei province. Hubei province is slowly starting to come out of lockdown bit at a time. I don't think Wuhan has yet, but there are now people starting to arrive. Workers are starting to go back to different parts of the country on trains and planes, but from what I can see, that is being very carefully monitored. Okay, so things have calmed down significantly here, and there are, as I say, people out and about now much more, and that seems to be getting more and more every day. But turning now to other countries, so the USA, which is currently the hardest hit country, and I can't help thinking there was no need for this. The USA, like other countries, had kind of 2 months notice, and they had 2 months to prepare for what was coming. But it seemed the USA and Europe and other countries seemed to ignore the warnings that were coming from both China and the WHO about the severity and the speed of spread of this virus. And I think also, you have to lead from the front here, and I feel that the leadership in the USA really didn't take this seriously at all. And I have my doubts whether they're still taking it seriously at all. It seems there's certain governors of states who are taking it seriously because they have the problem right on their doorstep. It's happening now to them. But I still feel the leadership in the USA is somewhat still not taking this serious enough. I heard the leadership say just the other day that they didn't see any problem with testing. They're not aware of any issues with testing, but clearly there are issues with testing. There's many state governors saying they just don't have enough testing, don't have enough equipment, don't have enough respirators, etc. So again, right now on to Europe. So Europe are also getting hit pretty hard, and there's something I don't quite understand about what's going on in Europe. If you look at Italy, Spain and the UK, they're getting kind of fairly significantly large amounts of death rates from this virus, where if you look at Germany, their death rate is significantly lower. Now I'm not quite sure why that is. I'm aware that Germany are doing significant amounts of testing. It seems much more than any other European country. However, they still have a huge amount of cases. They're not far behind the amount of cases of Spain and Italy now, yet their death rate is significantly less. So if there's any Germans watching, I would like to hear your comments. That I am aware that Germany has a much per capita higher rate of intensive care beds than most of the other European countries, if not all. But it would be interesting to get some feedback from any Germans or any people in Germany on to why they think that is. So on to the UK, which is the country where I was born in and I lived for many years. So first I'd like to congratulate the UK for changing policy. Once they realised this herd immunity policy was a non-starter and hundreds of thousands of people might have died, they very quickly changed the policy on that. And I also think they need a big round of applause for the temporary hospitals they've got built in pretty short space of time. You know, they've converted the Excel Centre in London to a hospital that is capable of housing 4,000 patients, and I believe they are doing the same with the NEC in Birmingham and also a venue in Manchester. So bravo and well done there. I think that is really great. But what I would say again, similar to the USA, the UK had 2 months on China to prepare, to get ready, but again it seems they didn't take it serious enough. I often wonder whether those emergency sort of hospitals that they are now putting into action in the UK may have not been needed if they'd have locked down the population some 2 or 3 weeks earlier. I have mentioned before that they allowed Cheltenham races to go ahead, which was just unbelievable. You know, 250,000 people all mingling in close. That one event alone could have spread the virus all around the country. I also am quite alarmed when I see pictures in the news of crammed commuter trains and buses, and a lot of those are taking healthcare workers, which I do find incredible. You know, I really think the government should be making arrangements for these healthcare workers to get to work by other means, whether that means laying on special trains for them or special coaches or buses, where they can be kept a better, you know, sort of isolated from other parts of the community. Here in China, a lot of the healthcare workers were provided special sort of living accommodation within hospital blocks or very close to hospital blocks. You know, the government rented whole hotels to put healthcare workers in, so they weren't mixing in with the normal community, because obviously the healthcare workers are at the highest risk of catching the virus because they're exposed to the virus far more than normal people. So I do think that's sort of kind of crazy that nothing's been done there. I also thought it was unbelievable. My son Ollie showed me something on Twitter that a couple of days before the lockdown went into action in the UK, there was a nightclub advertising an event as, oh, it's the last big party before we get locked down. I mean, the irresponsibility of that is just absolutely ridiculous. So, you know, I just find it bizarre, and I think it's scandalous that I'm seeing reports of NHS workers that don't have the correct protective gear, when, as I say, the government have had 2 months to prepare for this. They knew what was coming, and yet I've also heard stories that health authorities have sort of wrapped the knuckles of some of these health workers for posting on social media that there's problems with PPE equipment, etc., various equipment, masks, gowns, gloves, and some have even been threatened with dismissal if they continue to post. So again, you know, this is kind of double standards. You know, when this happens in China, there's a massive uproar that, oh, you know, you can't silence people, we have free speech. But it appears that, you know, is not always the case. I think that the free speech thing is you know, there when it's suited to a particular regime or a particular government, but when it goes against the narrative that they want to put out to the people, then it seems to be not okay. I also noticed recently, in the last few days, the government have took to pretty much China bashing, saying that, you know, China covered up. Yeah, there may have been some things China covered up, but I think once they were aware of how severe this thing was, they took action. And I think ever since then, they've been shouting out warnings to the rest of the world how bad this is and how contagious it is and how quickly it spreads. But it seems the WHO have been also, they've been sort of shouting about it a lot. They've issued many times that they felt other countries were just not taking enough action quick enough, and it seems these sort of countries have been very reactive instead of being proactive. So I think, yeah, back to the China bashing, I think it's that it may be an excuse to divert attention from the mess ups that the British government have made. I also think it may be an attempt to try to get out of Huawei and sort of please the Americans. So maybe they can say, oh well, because we're not happy with China about this, we will not use Huawei, and that will obviously then make the Americans happy. One more thing before I go is the thing about masks. Now, this virus is spread by droplets that come from people's mouths, noses, etc. And there's been a lot of sort of controversy whether you should wear masks or not, whether it's helpful or not. The sort of research that's been done by Chinese scientists have suggested that it is, because when you breathe, these tiny droplets come out of your mouth. Obviously, if you sneeze or cough, you will also disperse these droplets. So when you're in situations where there's a lot of people about, if pretty much everybody is wearing a mask, then it stops the transmission of these fine droplets from your mouth and from your nose. So one, it will stop people who have the virus already, who may be asymptomatic, from spreading those droplets. And it will also stop people who have not got the virus from inhaling those droplets. So I think it really does work. And I think if you look at the numbers in Southeast Asian countries, you know, they seem to have not been as bad as what's now happening in the USA and Europe. And I suspect the reason why the UK, Europe and America are suggesting their population doesn't wear masks is because they just don't have the supply. And I think that it might be to stop a sort of panic within the population. Suddenly if they says yes, you need to wear a mask, that there'd probably be mass panic amongst the population. So that's my personal opinion why that is. And it's kind of strange, if you don't need to wear a mask, then why are healthcare workers wearing a mask? So I think these are kind of interesting questions. I'll be interested to hear comments from you about that, about what your thinking is. And it also seems like, as I say here, I feel the odd one out. If I don't wear a mask, I get looks and stares. Yet in Western countries, it seems that people who do wear a mask feel uncomfortable and get looks and stares. So yeah, comment down below, tell me what you think. Anyway, that brings me to the end of this video. If you like what we do, give us a thumbs up. It really helps us get out there. If you like the channel in general, subscribe. And if you really want to know when we got a new video out, hit those bells. Also check out our social media. You know, we're active on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, right now, any video that's talking about coronavirus gets limited or demonetized. So we do have various other ways you can support us if you want to. We have WeChat, we have Buy Me a Coffee, and we have Patreon. And just so everybody knows, for the month of April, any donations through Buy Me a Coffee, the company behind Buy Me a Coffee are not taking their normal commission. So we actually will get the whole amount that you donate to support us. But anyway, as always, for now, take care.